Hello, everybody. Welcome to Wholehearted Loving. I'm Stephanie.
Hi, I'm Georgiana.
Today, we're going to be talking about intentionally shifting our energy, especially in cases where we tend to get distracted or when we tend to get stuck in rumination. But before we do that, we are going to do a body-based self-connection practice to connect with ourselves before we connect with each other and this podcast.
Yeah. I was just thinking which one I should walk us through, and maybe I'll walk us through two. We'll see. Let's begin with just wiggling the toes, see how that feels. And notice, especially if you've been listening for a while, notice when we ask you to bring some awareness to your body, some movement to your body, whether it's starting to also help you bring some awareness to your breath. I noticed that it took a while for that to happen for me, but slowly it did. So giving the toes a wiggle, perhaps noticing your breath, and then looking for that spot in your body that feels the most firmly grounded, the most firmly supported, the most firmly anchored, whatever speaks to you, feels right for you. Just check where that spot is for you. For me, I noticed two. I noticed my butt on the seat, and I also notice the weight of my hands on my lap. And with this practice, we're going to use a little bit of intentional touch and maybe some intentional breath. So the first one is, if it's comfortable, to place a hand somewhere on the front of your body. And then one hand on the top of your head. And we'll just be here for 3 breaths. 3 full inhales and exhales at your own pace. Notice how it feels. You can have your eyes open or your eyes closed. And then just letting your hands maybe shake out a little, release any tension that was built up. I notice my shoulders want some movement. And then we'll shift into another piece here where we place one hand on the side of the face and just sort of cupping the jaw, whatever feels good. And then one hand on the top of the head. And being here for 3 whole breaths. And you can notice like how firmly you want to press into your face, or maybe it's a very light and gentle touch. And then again, letting the hands rest or shake out. And then I'm just naturally doing the next one. It just intuition led me to this, so I'll share it with you. I have one hand on my chest, one hand on my knee. And you can see if that feels good for you to do. And being here for 3 breaths. And letting hands rest wherever it feels good. Taking a moment to notice what that felt like for you. Was it a big yes, big body yes? Was it a neutral? Was it a no?
Yes.
It was a big body yes. What did you notice about the 3 different ones?
Did I notice? I had a very sturdy sort of pyramid shape going on with my body at first. I'm sitting on the floor, so I've got bum on the ground. I had my knees up and my feet planted, so bum and 2 heels, 3 points of really strong, sturdy feeling contact, which is just pleasant. It's pleasant to feel sturdy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I always like combining body touch with holding the crown of the head. It connects head and body.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's a channel for moving energy, and that
Mm-hmm.
just feels good. And it's so good. Well, actually, I'll also say the jaw set me on a little internal thing. Holding my jaw and cheek in this way reminds me of toothaches from cartoons, which then reminds me of the Spanish story time in Duolingo, which is like very dramatic. And so I'm thinking, oh, okay, dolor, my little toothache. And then I came back to the breath. Uh, and it's just so important to pause with body and breath throughout the day. Like we just go on autopilot and we get busy, and it has so many implications in life to be able to pause and feel the body, feel the breath, and bring that into your relationships.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's such a game changer for me. And I never really had done the side of the face and the jaw before. This one's quite new for me, but I noticed, that's not a sensation I experience often. And
Mm,
there's a sweetness to it. It felt nice. And then I was drawn. I was only planning on sharing those two. And then I was drawn. My hand just naturally went to, okay, we've covered the top of the head, we've got the face, and we've got the torso. And now I need lower body. That was
mm,
just intuitively where my hand went. So for me, it felt nice to sort of it was almost like connecting with that energy and then bringing it slowly down.
mhm.
That felt good
Yeah,
for
I think
me.
that's such a good tip too for people to notice, like where, if you're just paying attention to your body and not asking it to do anything in particular, to notice what your body tends to do, where your hands tend to go. And that can be a good sign that those parts are desiring support.
Hmm. Yeah, you said something that I think is a nice invitation for everyone. You said it's pleasant to feel sturdy. And I've
Mm,
really been practicing, using different tools that help bring me a sense of sturdiness in my body. And I'm curious, when, as you listen to us and you reflect, what have what do you use to help create a sense of sturdiness in your body?
mm, mhm,
And maybe you have some tools or ways of being that are very obvious to you. And maybe there's a whole other little world that you can open up to of playing and seeing what else could bring you a sense of sturdiness in your body.
mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
sturdiness really carries over. That's part of the growing the pause and knowing yourself. And then in those situations where one might become rattled, suddenly we've got more access to this sturdiness that we've been cultivating. It's pretty huge.
Yeah. Right. A lot of people ask us, they want to grow their skills in setting boundaries or speaking their truth or making decisions and trusting their choices. And I think a big piece of that, a foundational piece, is learning to grow that sense of sturdiness, that felt sense, the felt experience of sturdiness in your body, where even if the outcome is difficult or it's not what you want it to be, we're not shaken and pulled in the same way. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
And we have more courage to do the thing that feels important to do, even if we feel scared.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like having a life vest.
Hmm.
Yeah,
I'm
nice.
imagining myself toddling around with a life vest on.
Yeah. Like on a wobbly paddleboard that's maybe not quite wide enough and it's threatening to tip you over, but you've got the sturdiness of your life vest to give you
Mhm.
confidence.
True. And when I learned, it was surprising. I mean, it was surprising to me, maybe shouldn't have been surprising, but when I learned how to cultivate the sense of sturdiness in my body, all of these activities that I love to do, like climbing and paddleboarding, became so much easier. Right? Even
Mm,
working out at the gym, like, I could lift so much more because I was feeling my feet on the ground. I was feeling my hands on the bars,
mm,
right? And that made such a difference. And I was talking to, different trainers I've had in the gym, and he's like, "Yeah, a lot of people don't have awareness of what their feet are touching and hands are touching while they're working out. And it totally
Mm,
changes your workout experience.
definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Drawing energy from the earth. That's a thing.
It's a thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Well, so I can imagine in those unsturdy times, and I've certainly experienced this myself, that I might get very distracted or completely stuck in ruminating thoughts forever
Mhm.
and revving myself up.
Yep. So today we get to chat about what I sort of discovered by accident, maybe, that really helped me with both of those things. Because when I really think about the last couple decades of my life, I've been a very distractible person. And I've had many bouts of rumination, daydreaming, worry, planning things in my head, and living in my head. So, this little gadget tool and the specific way of using it to help me practice bringing presence and bringing intentional shifts into my life has really changed a lot of things for me. So, I'm excited to share that.
Yeah. Well, tell us what it is.
Well, for 3 easy payments of $9.99. You remember watching those infomercials?
Sure do. Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's like 90s Ron Poe Peel and his juicer. Was that him?
Ooh.
The ShamWow?
The ShamWow guy, yeah. The
Yeah.
buckwheat husk pillow, that was a popular one, late night infomercial.
I'm not distractible at all. So let's pull the energy back. I'm going to feel my hands on my knees and notice my breath. So, this is going to be the story of me and my trusty timer.
Oh, it's a literal timer, like an egg timer.
It's a little literal timer. I think it's a kitchen timer. I mean, I have friends who they have these special, I think they're called Pomodoro timers, and they're timers that have increments of 1, 2, 5, 10, 15, 25 minutes. You can choose what kind of timer you want, what kind of increments you want. But I just had this kitchen timer already. And I thought, well, before I spend more money and buy something that maybe I don't need, let's try out using this kitchen timer. And it changed my life. And I've been sharing it with clients, and they are amazed by it. And I love it because we go from a place of sometimes being really hard on ourselves that we're so easily distractible and things don't get done, or we just suffer because we're always in some sort of mind rumination, thinking about things that don't actually feel good in the body. So today is a little bit of a invitation to try something out. And if someone had told me to try this 10 years ago, I would have laughed in their face and said, that's ridiculous. There's no way that's going to make a change in my life. I was wrong.
Perfect.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me set this up a little bit of how it sort of started, or maybe I should describe a little bit of how I've lived a lot of my life. Um, I've always sort of thought or been told, or no, maybe it's just a self thing. Like I'm a messy, unorganized person.
Mm.
And I think it started in childhood because I was just overwhelmed by things and I didn't know where to put things. I think we had an episode where we talked about
Mm.
I didn't understand systems. I didn't know how to categorize things. I was overwhelmed by an abundance of things. I also was sort of conditioned to believe there was a right and wrong with everything and that everything had to be done perfectly. So I would say I probably had a little bit of this paralysis of if I can't do it perfectly, then I'm not going to do it.
Mm.
And then another coping mechanism of mine growing up was to keep busy so I don't have to feel any of the hard things. So when you combine those things that I just talked about, like some perfectionism, some sensory overwhelm and dysregulation, and the keeping busy to stay out of the body, a lot of like little everyday tasks don't get taken care of, and then they start building up, right?
Mm.
And I think a long time ago, I was probably hard on myself, comparing myself to friends or other people who are more organized or more tidy or whatever. And then slowly I realized, oh, this is like a nervous system thing for me. And this is a, protective patterning for me. One of the things that I had to do growing up, because I felt like the home environment was so hard and overwhelming for me, was to shut off from seeing. I don't know if that makes sense to you when you hear
Sure.
me say that. So, like, if there's socks on the floor and books over there on a pile or things cluttered around, I wouldn't actually see it. Like, I wouldn't see it enough for it to bother me. And I think I was just in this internal world of my own, like sort of cutting off from seeing things. And so I could function in a lot of chaos without any of it bothering me. Whereas I'd meet friends or people or partners where they wanted everything tidy and everything put away in its spot. And it's not that I don't want that or didn't want that. And I'm not, now that I am more connected to my body, I see that my body craves that tidiness, the orderly, the things that are not cluttered. But at the time, I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not bothered by it at all. And it was
Mm.
because I was so cut off from my body experience. Anyways, that's a little bit of a background to understand. So anyways, I decided, let's just experiment a little bit with a timer. And I thought I would take a task that I do doing dishes. And I was curious about like my distractibility and how it impacted my life and like how severe it actually was. And so I'm playing with a timer. And I thought to myself, let's set the timer for like 5 minutes. And the game is, and I made it a game. The game is to wash the dishes for 5 minutes and only wash the dishes. And don't walk off and do anything. Don't check the phone. Don't go back and walk it to the bedroom because I see something out of the corner of my eye that actually should be somewhere else. Or start writing a to-do list of the meal plans that come into my mind while I'm washing dishes, or stop and call a friend because they popped into my mind. Like, so many things, random things pop into my mind. And my old pattern is to follow every single impulse, and it would distract me from the task at hand. So I decided to play this game, set it for 5 minutes. I think I was a minute in. I'm like, I can't do this game. It's too hard. My brain goes so fast. And then when I see things, it triggers my brain to go to all of the different places. Ideas come up. I think it's one super strength that I have that makes it so that I'm really good at what I do. And it also is very challenging to get regular, mundane, everyday tasks done, especially ones I'm not super excited about, because way more exciting ideas come into my head.
Right.
And so what I learned about the first learning about this 5 minute game in the kitchen is 5 minutes is too long.
Very good.
Is that I would feel the pull and I wouldn't be able to sustain 5 minutes of directed focus on this thing without feeling really uncomfortable. But what it taught me, what it helped me become aware of, is what the pull feels like. And that was a big, big lesson for me, to start recognizing, what does the pull feel like, to be pulled energetically, feel pulled away from the task.
Mm.
And to me, I felt it. I started recognizing the moments where it came, where I was no longer wanting to do dishes. And I would recognize how it would feel to just follow that pull, because that's what I would do. That was my old pattern, was like, oh, a pull comes, follow it. go file this paper away, even though like it's been sitting here for 3 months and there has been no urgency to file it. But right now, when it's like 45 seconds into doing the dishes, I need to file that piece of paper. and, and so it gave me the opportunity to notice, how does it feel for my body to get pulled away from something? And what kind of relief do I get from following that pull?
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, okay, 5 minutes is too long for me right now. And this is, you and I talk about this a lot with people in our programs, of really learning how to create baby steps. So 5 minutes was too long. No big deal. So I was like, 2 minutes. Let's try 2 minutes. 2 minutes was much more doable and comfortable. And then I felt like success after 2 minutes. I'm like, oh my gosh, I did it for 2 minutes. However, the journey to 2 minutes was also interesting. So I was like, okay, let's set the thing for 2 minutes. And I'm like, Shirley, like, how many times can I be distracted in 2 minutes? Well, many. So it seems many. But what my next challenge for myself was in this game was feel the pull and then come back. Like, don't follow the impulse to go, which was my old patterning. Right. And
Yes.
nobody would have died if I went to file that thing away or go put something in the laundry or go make myself a snack. But that's not the point. The point is, I wanted to practice shifting into a new pattern so that I have access to something different if I choose it in the
Yeah.
future. Because right now, or like when I was starting, I had no access to anything other than following every impulse as it came up, which
Yeah.
meant for some great things. And it also meant for a lot of tasks that just sort of got abandoned partway through and then would ultimately create a sense of chaos in my home because nothing was put away or tidied or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I practiced 2 minutes. And my agreement with myself is every time I notice the pull to be distracted, to like look out the window, to go put something away, to go call someone, text someone, check the phone for something, I would feel my feet on the ground, notice my breath, come back to the dishes.
This is
And I,
conscious relationship, right?
yeah,
People
yeah.
think it's romantic partnership, but it's noticing your body, your pull, how you respond, and making a choice to do the thing that you said you wanted to do.
Right. So you want to practice like growing the skills that help you create amazing relationship. Set your timer for 2 minutes. See if you can stay on your task. If you have that pattern of going all over the place like I did, and see what you notice. And so what was cool was in those 2 minutes, I could feel something is rewiring in me because I started recognizing the pattern. I started being with the discomfort of not following the pull. And that felt gross in the beginning. I was like, oh, I want to go put that thing away that I see. And I was like, you can put that thing away after the 2 minutes. Right. And learning to be with that discomfort for a short period of time, ride it out for the 2 minutes. It grew that muscle
Yeah.
to be with discomfort and to be
So
able to
important.
make, right? That was the growing the pause. And then I could make, once I grew the pause of feeling my feet on the ground, I can feel the dishes in my hand, I can notice my breath. I can make I think it was for episode 1, we talked about making the next intentional choice. For me, the next intentional choice at that time playing that game was, I want to come back to the dishes. I want to do these 2 minutes. I want to help my system rewire this pattern. And
Mm-hmm.
I would just do that occasionally, set my timer. And then once 2 minutes felt easier, I would add, maybe it was like 4 minutes. Right. And what, like, a really cool thing that happened that I didn't expect to happen was I also developed a new relationship with understanding time. So what I realized was how long it would take me to do the dishes. Like, I never knew. And maybe that
Mm.
seems like a weird thing. But I didn't have that concept of time. So when I set 2 minutes And then I realized, oh, the dishes are not done in 2 minutes yet. So set another 2 minutes. And slowly I realized like 2 is a bit short. And I've now grown my capacity where I can do 5. I can do 5, not super easily, but I can do 5 and feel the discomfort, and it's okay. So I started doing dishes in increments of 5 minutes. And what I noticed was actually the dishes got done, and then the kitchen was actually done in about 15. And I thought, wow, the whole kitchen can be done in 15 minutes. That's great to know because I have pockets of 15 minutes. Or I started noticing the dishes can get done in 5, right? But maybe the sink and the counters can't get done. But now I had this new concept of what I could get done in 5 minutes, which I never had before. And so I would always assume that things took forever or that things took way less time than they actually did. And I could never quite plan things well. And what I also realized was for a long time, I had a very distorted relationship with time because growing up in my mind, I had to do everything perfectly. So if you have to do everything perfectly in my mind is you have to have a perfect system, a perfect way of doing it. There's only one right way of doing it. I would have to figure out that way. Sometimes I would get lost in the figuring out the way. So I was like, screw it all. And then other times I couldn't execute it the way I thought it needed to be executed. I couldn't do the task perfectly. Like I couldn't scrub the thing perfectly clean and it would take me forever to do it. And so in my mind, I registered all of those activities as it takes forever and I have
Right.
no time.
Right.
And so none of these things would get done. And what I realized using this timer was I have lots of pockets of 2 minutes and 5 minutes. I never realized that so much could get done in 2 minutes and 5 minutes because I was such a perfectionist and an all or nothing kind of person for so long.
A tyrant.
A tyrant, a sweet, cute tyrant, but a tyrant. Like, I I just thought everything had to be all or nothing. I didn't know how to enjoy the sink is clean
Right.
if like the counters were not. I was like, well,
Mhm.
what's the point of a clean sink if your counters are not clean, right? I couldn't enjoy the front hallway is tidy if the living room was cluttered. And
Mhm.
so like it's been such a reprogramming for me to go from all or nothing to all or something to grow this relationship with time and understand it better and to learn how to be with the discomfort of getting pulled away and then bringing in intentional shifting of energy back to where I want it to go.
Beautiful.
Nuts.
Nuts. Can I ask
Fun.
you some
Great.
questions?
Yes.
Um, I can imagine the unconscious objections that people are having in their minds when they think what a great
Yes.
idea this is, and then there's going to be all this little narrative running. So, first question, total aside, are you aware of magic erasers?
I like magic erasers. They baffle my mind how they work.
Yes, I don't even
But
want to know how they work, but boy, are those a time saver. um, okay, so my first question that came up as you were describing this was what is the difference between being distractible and following distractions and multitasking?
mm, that's a great question. For a long time, I thought that multitasking was the way. And to some degree, I still do some elements of multitasking. But when I multitask now, it's very intentional. So, for example, when I do the dishes now, I'm a online course junkie and there's a lot of courses I have access to that I really get excited to listen to and watch. And so now I've paired washing dishes with watching an online video learning something I'm excited to learn. And there's some that like it's really, I can just hear and absorb it. Others, I would need more like focus. So there's that intentionality as well, that discernment of this is some type of information I can take in while washing the dishes. And it's just sort of light and sort of there for me.
Mm.
So that's an intentional choice. I think for me, distraction has more the feel of it's just this wild autopilot that you're on, and
Yeah.
it's not very intentional at all. So that's a big difference for me, I think. I have shifted away from the amount of multitasking I used to do. I think I'm much more focused on do this one thing. One of my teachers, Elia Marak, I love him, says, when I eat, I eat. When I sit, I sit. And like that was hard for me to practice being a, like lifelong multitasker. And still sometimes I need to be very intentional to focus on one task at a time. But I've rewired my system to the point where it doesn't feel good anymore to have my
Mm.
energy spread out 5 ways at once or 3 ways at once, sometimes even 2 ways at once. But
Mhm.
other times, the other experience is it creates more ability for me to focus. So, for example, like if I am journaling, sometimes if I put on binaural beats, I don't know if I'm saying it right, but
Yeah.
certain frequency of music, it helps me focus more,
Mhm.
right? Um, and sometimes when I put on a certain playlist, it's just songs, like regular music, it helps me get in that flow more.
Mhm.
But what I noticed is before, I would just always have music on, or I would
Mm.
always have something on in the background. It wasn't a moment to moment discernment and feeling in the body and checking in and readjusting until it felt right. So even now, it's not that I always want to hear those certain frequencies. Sometimes I turn it on thinking I want it and it's going to be helpful. And I notice it's actually not helpful. It's distracting me or it's taking me to some other place. Right. And other times where I sit down to work and I notice it's so silent right now, like I can't focus. I need a little bit of something. And other
Mhm.
times where I assume I need a little bit of something and I put something on and it actually distracts me and I can't focus. And so
Yeah.
that's, I think, a big lesson for me too. And I try to share this with people is you aren't going to need the same thing every time, all the time. You're not going to feel the same way with the same tool and strategy every single time. And so you're much better off learning your body and honoring it moment to moment and getting to
Mhm.
know it in that way because it's going to be different all the time.
Yeah.
At least
It
that's
sure
my
is.
experience.
And really, it can be very subtle and really particular too. I'm the same way. I used to just turn on the music, turn on the TV, whatever it was. And the degree to which I can notice the subtleties of what feels right and wrong or helpful or necessary in that moment is pretty extraordinary. And I think there's something that we can't yet measure in there to do with frequency and vibration and something that's matching some part of us that's enhancing whatever the thing
Hmm.
is.
And
Um,
yeah, you finish.
Human design,
Mm.
my personal health system reading. So if you guys are familiar with human design, you might know about personal health systems. I had this 4 hour long reading from this woman who produced a 30-page document. Maybe I'll link her in the notes,
Yeah.
although it's pretty intense, I'll say. And there was so much there for me to work with. And she said, just pull out, do one thing, baby steps. There would
Mhm.
be one thing from this reading that seems like an obvious yes to your body. And what it was the way I'm supposed to eat,
Mm.
which is also very intense. I'm supposed to eat with my eyes closed. I'm supposed to, everything has to smell and feel right in my mouth. And
Mhm.
I'm intended to surround myself with whatever noise or frequency feels exactly right in that moment. So for the first
Mm.
month after this reading, I was very intense about it. And I did it to a T. And it would be like, okay, in this moment, the sound that I need is the hum from the fridge,
Mm.
or particular voices on a podcast, or classical music, or silence. And it became so obvious what my body was wanting in those moments. So like there's a lot of information in there if you're going to go
Mhm.
deep and pay attention.
Well, it's such a great practice to create, whether you dive in really deep through human design in that way, or you just notice like really simple things. Like if I put on music, is it better with music, without music? Is it better this genre of music or that genre? What do you notice in your body, right? I used to have a practice. I still actually have this practice where every morning when I get in the shower, I choose a song and I play it on repeat while I'm in the shower. I like music on repeat. I'm one of those people. and um, and some days I'll have a song that pops up in my mind and I'll think that that's the one I want. And then I turn it on and I'm like, no, this is not the one. Right? It needs to be and it'll be like it needs to be like faster or slower. It needs to have a softer voice or it needs to be more upbeat. And slowly I could discern that. And sometimes it would surprise me what my body told me I needed that morning. So it can be as simple as a practice like that.
And it's
Right?
so important. Like this extrapolates into relationship in such beautiful ways. People will often get frustrated. I think the typical refrain between men and women is like, I don't know what I want for dinner, like whatever. And then they're like, how about this? And it's like, no, no, not that. To be able to answer that question speaks to so much. To be able to know what you need in a moment is how you can connect with people and let them help you. It's how you can get what you need and learn to ask for what you need.
Yeah, that's the thing I was going to say earlier is how these simple ways of practicing what feels good in your body, what doesn't, what you want more of, what you want less of, what is a tiny shift, like tiny nuance, of shift that feels good or better. If you can grow that muscle, grow your ability to get familiar with that and to start articulating that and following that for yourself, you've built such a great relational skill to let someone know, how am I feeling right now? What am I needing right now? And sometimes what I'm needing is I don't know, right? But if you can follow, like I've been practicing, I don't know what I need right now. Could you help me decide?
Mm-hmm.
That feels nice.
Yeah,
Right? Or
that's
I don't
beautiful.
know what I need right now. Would you like to choose? Could
Mm-hmm.
you choose for us, please? Right? Sometimes I'm just in overwhelm of like I've made too many decisions, my brain's mush. I don't want to decide. And now I can do that and let go, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
when you said women who say, who get asked, what do you want for dinner? And they say, I don't know. And then someone suggests something and you're like, yeah, no, not that. Sometimes that's helpful because that helps you sort of pare down to what it is you want, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we also know that sometimes those conversations never go anywhere good and turn into a fight because we aren't willing to take responsibility and ownership of claiming what we want. And we also won't give someone else permission to decide and choose. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like a no win for everyone, right? And I've definitely been in that situation before. Um, and now it's really fun to get to say, I don't know. I can't decide. Can you please decide?
Yeah, I love
And then
that.
to let it go and then to be like, let the person choose. And maybe you realize, hey, that wasn't my number one choice, but it's okay. I don't really care. But before, I think perfectionist tendencies again was like, but that isn't the perfect thing.
Right,
And then I would feel bad about that.
right.
But yeah,
Yeah, it'll
that's
give
no
you
for me.
information. Totally. And it's fun for the other person. Like I'll often do that at restaurants. I'll be like, I can't decide between this and that. Server, surprise me. And
Mhm.
sometimes they seem like put upon, like they're being put to some kind of test that they're worried they're going to fail, but often they're just delighted. That can be a
Mhm.
lot of fun for people. Also, part of my human design reading was the auditory element of this. So if I am wondering whether I want to eat this or that, saying it out loud or asking somebody to ask me out loud, would you prefer tuna or chicken?
Mhm.
That will give me information, and it can just be so obvious. It's like, oh, now I know the answer, like, don't be afraid to ask for help, to ask for surprises,
Yeah.
and to feel the answer, because the answer is within you.
This is great because it reminds me of when I work with people and they'll say, I don't know what we should talk about today because we could talk about this or we could talk about that. And I really like to give people the opportunity to practice feeling what feels true for them in that moment and learning how to feel it and trust it and go with it and then check in afterwards to see if it was aligned or whether they want to shift and change. And so often I'll ask them, like, are you open to exploring this right now? And they'll say yes. I've never had anyone say no. Um, and I'll present it, and there's different ways to present it. Imagine like there's two doors in front of you, and one door, we're going to walk through, we're going to address this. Another door, it's going to be this. Like, which door do you feel more pulled to walk through right now?
Mm,
And that has a little bit of imagery, a little bit of energetics, and they always know. They
yeah.
always know. And, what you're describing is a similar version of that. It's just using the words out loud. Would you like this or would you like that? And whether you understand or follow human design or not, I think that's a great practice to just bring in and see what becomes clearer for you, if anything, by asking yourself that question out loud or asking someone to ask you the question. Um, my kids are one is a manifesting generator and one is a generator. So they also operate, I think, like that. I don't know enough about human design to speak too much on it, but I know that, um, you know, I've been, you know, I've been advised as a mother what's helpful for them is to ask them, would you like this or this? That's easier than the open-ended question of what would you like? And it's
Yes.
funny because I had sort of discovered that just even before I even heard of human design, just in mothering my children and noticing like what got responses and what got like, I don't know.
Mm,
And I could tell like when I leave it open, a lot of times, unless they totally, totally know for sure, it's, I don't know. I don't know. I don't care. Whatever. But then I'll say, like, do you want to have fish tonight? No.
right. Yeah.
How about chicken curry? Yes.
Yeah.
Great. Right. And it's just neat that there's different ways that help us, that support us in that inner
Hmm.
connecting to the inner knowing.
Yeah, for sure. This is making me think of, I don't know how to describe this visual I have in my mind. It's like pockets of information that are linked to tentacles of feeling down below in this hierarchy of my mind. So, in reference to ruminating thoughts and decision paralysis,
Hmm.
we're so good at thinking all the time, right? Like, you
Hmm.
don't need to do any more of that. If you have a problem, you've thought through every possible angle, and now you're paralyzed because you don't know what to do. And if you separate those thoughts out, say you've got three options you can't decide between,
Hmm.
put those up in the air in these little thought pockets and hold those there separately. There they are. You don't need to think about them anymore. They exist. You know what they are. And then feel each one. And it will be
Hmm.
obvious in your body what your choice is. In positive intelligence, Shirzad Shamin's method, he does a lot of projecting into the future. So say you've made
Hmm.
this decision. Imagine yourself in 5 years having made that decision. What will be the truth? How will you feel, etc.? That's another
Hmm.
way of doing these things,
Yeah.
feeling into it.
Yeah, I have a version of that that really changed things for me, which was I play it on the movie screen, whatever you make that mean. Like fast forward a little bit, even in like 10-minute, 1 hour increments. If I make this choice now, how am I going to feel during? How am I going to feel after?
Hmm.
And I sort of imagine and I run different scenarios and I listen in the body and it's so much easier. than
Yeah.
trying to figure it out in my head, pros, cons, weighing it out, what's better, right? Um, and learning to use the body's wisdom to make those choices was
Yeah.
huge, right? If I
It
remember playing out decisions or not to like text my ex like years ago, because like
yeah.
my autopilot was, I got a text, I miss him, I got a text, it's a Christmas, it's a holiday, it's a something, I got a text. And then that was what my mind was telling me. But then the other part of the mind was, no, screw him. Like, he's been a jerk. Don't text. And then I'm like,
Mhm.
should I text? Should I not? But life is short. Like, are we going to let this come in? Like, just going
Yeah.
nuts in my head.
Yeah.
And so then I would play it through and I was like, well, the initial waiting for, like, the initial sending it might feel good. The waiting to see if there was a reply would feel gross. The high of receiving a text would feel great. And then the reality of like this relationship just died and is going nowhere would feel awful again.
Mhm.
And like, do I want to feel all those things? And
No.
sometimes I was like, sure.
White knuckle my way through. Yeah.
And other times I was like, no, like I'm really done with feeling that
Yeah. Totally.
again.
I want to celebrate for a moment what's on the other side of all this body connection, which is
Mm-hmm.
that sometimes there's some thinking to be done, but mostly our unconscious is taking charge of the thinking, and it's not an action that we actually need to do often. And the body directs you. And so now I find myself in a place of it just being obvious what's true and what's the path. And so now, if it's like there's a bunch of options, I don't think of it in terms of good or bad or right or wrong anymore. I'm just like, which one is true? And it's clear. It's so
And this
nice.
will probably sound really woo woo and out there for some people. And it would have
Clear.
sounded that way for me
Yeah.
before. And now, having lived it and practiced the in between discomfort of it, that's how life feels. I'm not actually making that many decisions. Um, like I felt like I used to have to make.
Yeah.
It's just, this is obvious. This is what needs to be done or said right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that
And sometimes it
clarity
isn't
took
the
time
most
to get.
sensible choice on paper, but it's still what needs to happen or what is happening.
Mhm, mhm. I wanna help tie how this timer thing is helpful for rumination. If you get stuck in rumination, worry, anxiety cycles, a skill that's really important to build is the ability to pause and the ability to intentionally redirect attention somewhere else, even if it's for one breath, even if
Mm.
it's for 1 second. Because what that does, if you go straight back to rumination, I say this to clients all the time, if you want to go straight back to rumination, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But what you've done by pausing for a moment and going back to the dishes, just for one more dish, is you've interrupted that old pattern that keeps you on this autopilot of, if I don't, something bad will happen.
Yeah.
And it slowly grows that muscle of, oh, I have another path, another option I could take if I choose. Right? If I
Mhm.
want to ruminate for the next hour, I can. And if that doesn't feel good anymore, I have a new pathway I can take because I've been slowly growing it, right?
Mhm.
Through coming back to washing that cup.
Yeah. That's so important. So one of the unconscious objections that I'm sure people are having is like 2 minutes, surely I can do longer than 2 minutes. 2 minutes is pathetic. I want to be very clear that
Mhm.
this isn't about doing the dishes. It's not what's your capacity and time limit for doing dishes. This is about rewiring a pattern and a neural pathway. So that's the
Mhm.
goal. It's not about the dishes.
Yeah. And it's also about rewiring a new pattern because many people don't have the pattern of celebrating something small. I
Yes.
definitely did not have the pattern. I didn't have the pattern of celebrating even the big things because I was
Yeah.
already on to the next project, the next goal. Um, I have really had to learn and practice celebrating things in general and being proud of myself and noticing change and accomplishment. and seeing the effort that I put into it and the dedication, and also to learn how to celebrate much smaller things. And
Mm,
so recently, I think on one of the priming for the peace, priming the body for peace coaching calls, we talked about when we practice celebrating things that were smaller,
mm,
right? And we got into this practice of just waving our hands around, woo, right? Having a little delight. And we were talking about celebrating doing something for 1 minute. That's another thing. I practice doing things for 1 minute.
mm,
And I would celebrate. Oh, I did it for 1 minute. If I want to do it for more, I can. And if I'm done after 1 minute, I don't have to. Right. So for someone
mhm,
who's been a lifelong perfectionist like me, learn and an all or nothing kind of person, learning how to do things for 1 minute was really important for me to learn. Do it for
mm,
1 minute, celebrate it. If I want to do more, do more. If I'm done, you have total permission to be totally done with it.
yeah.
And yeah.
This is so important because I can imagine in the past, I would have been like, okay, great. Okay, I'm celebrating because G told me to. It's been a minute. I'm
Mhm.
celebrating because I did the thing I set out to do, but
Mhm.
it was only 1 minute. And
Mhm.
look, the dishes still aren't done, you know? Like
Mhm.
it's
Mhm.
such a natural thing, I think, to kind of crap on ourselves in these ways and to not be able to celebrate or not be able to celebrate fully, and remember the point. That's another
Mhm.
point of distraction. We can get
Mhm.
distracted from our celebration by looking at all these other things
Mhm.
that aren't perfect.
Yeah, and, like, there's one way this is what I like to discern between comparing, like, noticing to shame and judge ourselves, or noticing to inspire,
Mm,
right? So, are you noticing that one dish is done, and you're noticing that to compare that with, "Well, that was crappy, I didn't even finish the dishes," and judge yourself? Are you noticing one dish is done, and, like, part of me desires that the rest of them get done? Or like 5 more get done. So then
mm,
I will do 5 more.
yeah.
So noticing, there's different paths you can take noticing. Noticing to shame and criticize and blame yourself or guilt yourself, or noticing to tap into what else do I desire? And can I
Mm,
use this noticing to inspire me to take another step towards that? Right? So if
yeah.
you want the rest of the dishes done, if you do 3 more, you're closer to getting them done than none more. None
Yeah.
more, no more. So I have found, and this is again part of shifting from all or nothing to all or something way of being, is does it move me in the direction that I desire? Or does it move me away from that direction?
Yeah.
And that becomes my gauge instead of like, did I do it all?
Right. You're so good at that. That is something that inspires me and that I desire more of in my being. I want to express more of that in many of the ways that you do, my own ways, but in that inspiring, helpful way.
Yeah, I like using what I desire to inspire me instead of making me feel crappy that I don't have it.
Yeah.
Like, that feels
Yeah.
gross.
Shame. No, shame chases you down the block, but inspiration draws you forward.
Yeah, inspiration and celebration. So I remember after that coaching call we did, and we were really talking about celebrating 1 minute and like with actual body movements and sounds. And a little bit of that was artificial, if you want to call it that, for the purpose of shifting your nervous system state and just trying. Like if you wave your hands around and say, "Wow, I did it." Like just for that moment, like it's really hard to be a grouchy ass. Like you just get happy for that moment, right? Like it changes something in your energy. Even if
Yeah.
you're sort of like doing it in a disgruntled way, it changes something, makes you laugh or something.
Hmm.
Um, and so that day, I think later that day, I did a workout at home, which I hadn't done in forever. I've been working out at the gym, but I really got out of the habit and the routine of working out at home. And working out at home before meant like a proper workout, which at the time I would have defined as like, I don't know, 40 minutes, 45 minutes. And this time I did like a much shorter one. And that became my new game of, can I do an 18-minute workout and like celebrate that and feel like I've started that routine again. And so I finished it. I intentionally noticed how I felt during, and reminded myself to say it out loud. I feel really great right now. I remember how much I love this. And like, that might sound silly, but those are the things you feel, but we often like lose it. It just like drifts off into nowhere and you don't get to really use it for anything and enjoy it. So I, told myself, like I said out loud, I enjoy this so much. I feel so good right now. I'm so happy. I'm reminded of how much I miss this and what a difference it makes in my life when I do this. And so I had that internal dialogue like out loud when I was doing it. And after, I remember to check in. How do I feel after I've done it? I was like, I feel really good. I feel very strong. I feel energized. I feel like I did something for me. I feel like I did something that moved me in that direction of what I desire, which is to get back into that routine and feel good in my body. And so I decided to do the little celebration that we had made up for that, like wave your hands around and do a little woohoo for yourself. And it was hilarious. And I just laughed at myself, and it also felt good. And I was like, why not? Why not celebrate these things?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
good. Thank you, Gigi. Anything else you want to say on this before we do a closing practice?
Yeah, a little sort of going back to the timer. If you tend to be someone like, how I used to be, of like finding it difficult to start things, like Steph said, like if you just think about doing things and you struggle with actually doing something. I was working with a client on this. He was like, I do that all the time. Like I've thought it all out in my mind, planned it all out 5 times, and nothing's been done. And then I'm hard on myself, and then I feel crappy, and then I don't do anything, and it goes in cycles. And so we practiced immediately with the timer, and we practiced setting it for 1 minute, and we practiced like getting up and going. Like, so I actually have this with 2 clients of mine where we've been practicing getting up. Like the act of getting up, it sounds ridiculous. But like when we're in analysis paralysis, when we ruminate, when we're just in place of land of insight, the opposite of that is getting up off your butt and doing the something, right? So we wanted to practice wiring in the body to get up.
Yeah.
So we practiced getting up, and like for that 1 minute, they would go do something that moves their life in the direction they desire, whatever that meant. And for one guy, it was, I'm going to do 10 push-ups right now, because 10 push-ups was the thing he wanted to get into his morning routine. It wasn't happening. And then in the middle of the day, he would just feel bad he didn't do his 10 push-ups in the morning. And we were like, let's play with this. Like what happens if I set the timer right now? Would you get up and do them now? He's like, yeah, I could do them now easily. And so we were just wiring in the new habit of, when I think about it, even if it's to realize I didn't do it this morning, I'm just going to get up and do the thing. And then I'm going to celebrate I did the thing. I'm going to feel how good it felt. I'm going to remind myself how good it felt, and then I'm going to celebrate. And we did that with, another guy. And he was like, that pile of crap has been sitting there forever. I've been staring at it. And he's like, this feels good to just get up and like do something with it. So that's a nice way to use the timer is, if you find that you tend to just sit and think about things, set the timer for 1 minute and just go do the thing or do the something. If you're like Steph and you have 3 things and you don't know which one to choose, it doesn't matter. Choose one. Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Have you got a closing practice in mind or in body?
What would I like to do? I don't know why this is coming, but I would like to flap our arms like birds, like we have wings.
Fabulous.
And just notice, right? Feel your sturdiness. And like, do you have chicken wings?
Yeah, it's just
right? Or do you have like flowy wings that are like outstretched? Are they like mine are sort of like really gracefully flowing, but maybe yours like flap really hard and fast? I don't know.
my instinct was immediate chicken wings, which is like a tighter, closed off body posture that isn't, we're not flying very far with our chicken wings. And I
Mm-hmm.
consciously thought, no, no, I do not desire chicken wings in this moment. I want big, flowing wings.
Well, this is sort of neat to practice too, is to alternate between chicken wings and then like something else. Right? So like then I've got what is this? What kind of bird flies like this stuff? Like
An
like
eagle?
oh, an eagle? Yeah, I was like, oh, maybe like an eagle. And then I was sort of like, you know how eagles sort of do this?
Oh,
You can
yes,
sort of,
soaring.
how do I describe what I'm doing? They soar, right?
Yeah,
And so I rock my body a little bit. That right now feels better than chicken wings.
totally.
And then what about penguins? Do they have wings or do they have arms? What do they have?
They have, those must be wings, but they're more like flaps. Yeah, and they just
Okay.
waddle.
But that's fun too.
Yeah.
I think that like both of them are better than the chicken, right? And so just something as ridiculous as this helps you notice what feels good and what doesn't.
Yeah, and
So
it
right
helps
now
you
in this
have fun.
moment, would you like to be a chicken, a penguin, or an eagle? What feels good?
Yeah, you can put all those decisions up in the little thought pockets and then notice in your body which one feels true. Great. Chicken, penguin, or eagle. Thanks, Gigi.
What's yours that you like right now?
Um, well, I like the eagle feeling, but it's more fun to be the penguin.
That's also a good nuance to notice, right?
Yeah, yeah,
This is
great.
fun. I
It
like
is.
it.
Me too. Thank you,
Well,
Gigi. Anything else you want to say?
no, I think that's it.
Okay, great. Well, as always, please like, follow, and subscribe. And if anything we've said here today has been helpful for you, please share with somebody that you care about. I will also invite you to share this podcast with somebody and give us a review if you're into that. And if you want to do more of this work with us more closely, you can join our program, Priming the Body for Peace, which you can find on our website, wholeheartedloving.com. See you
Bye.
next time.